All right, so a lot of you have been wanting me to review this film for quite some time, and here I am. So let's talk about it. My name is Brandon Keith Avery, and this is just my opinion. Hey, what's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Just My Opinion for my buck-breaking documentary movie review. And if this is your first time finding me and you happen to like the video, please give me that thumbs up and consider subscribing. All right, guys, this film, Buck Breaking, is being written, produced, and directed by Mr. Tariq Nasheed. This is what the gentleman looks like on IMDb if you want to go look him up. And he can be described as an author, musician, filmmaker, producer, activist, and anti-racism strategist. I happen to have 7 of the 8 films that he has put out. The one that I don't have, I believe, is called Dark Medicine. It is a horror film. I have not seen it or heard anyone talk about it. But I have all of his films right here. The first one being Hidden Colors, the untold history of people of Aboriginal, Moor, and African descent. We also have Hidden Colors 2, the triumph of melanin. Hidden Colors 3, the rules of racism. Hidden Colors 4, the rules of white supremacy, or excuse me, the religion of white supremacy. And I have to say this one happens to be one of my favorite. Also, one of his recent films, Hidden Colors 5, the art of black warfare. 1804, the hidden history of Haiti, another favorite of mine. And last but not least, Buck Breaking. I don't know, with all of his films, I probably should do some type of ranking, but at the end of this video, I will tell you which one is my favorite and least favorite. So you may be asking yourself, Brandon, why are you reviewing this film now? Why didn't you review it when it first came out, April of 2021? I do have a reason for that, which I'll explain in a second, but I did want to share this with you. I am a bit more motivated to review it now because of Tariq Nasheed's latest film that he's working on right now, American Maroon. He just dropped that trailer about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I did react to that, and when that is released, I do plan on reviewing it. It did look pretty good. Here's my reaction video right here. Also, I have been reviewing his films in the past. This is Hidden Colors 5, The Art of Black Warfare. I reviewed that 2 years ago. It did pretty well on my channel, had 125,000 views. And about 4 years ago, I also did review 1804, The Hidden History of Haiti, another favorite of mine. That got about 15,000 views, and that's when my channel was a bit smaller. So if you want to go check out my past Tariq Nasheed videos, you can with this American Maroon first look trailer reaction, Hidden Colors 5, and the 1804 movie reviews for those documentaries. Now, to be honest with you, to answer a question of why I did not review this film when it first came out, one reason I'll give towards the end of this review, but for now I'll say the content in this documentary is very, very sensitive to the LGBTQ community. It seems like, or people are perceiving it as an attack on that community in the black community, and it is not. And just to address that and this documentary as well, in no way, shape, or form, or this documentary, Tariq Nasheed or the guest that he has in his documentary are saying or suggesting that if you are a part of the LGBTQ community, that you are not deserving, that you don't deserve to be loved, that you deserve to be mistreated and not acknowledged as a human being. No, there is nothing like that in this documentary at all, nothing remotely close. Me personally, I feel that if you are a part of the LGBTQ community, I love you just like you love me. I acknowledge you as a human being just like everybody else, and I feel that you deserve the same love, respect, and protection as everybody else on the planet. If anybody tries to step to you and harm you in any type of way, I will be right there by your side, locked arms, ready to defend you. That's just not right. You should not be mistreated in any way, shape, or form. You, like I said, you deserve the same love, respect, and protection as everybody else. I feel that if 2 men want to be together and 2 women want to be together, they should be together. It has nothing to do with me. It doesn't hurt me at all. If they want to get married and frolic and live happily ever after, more power to you. That's great. Live your life. Be happy. And look, I don't have children. I plan to one day. And if my son or daughter end up liking the same sex, I'm not going to do anything. I'm still going to love and support them. And I also feel that same-sex relations should be in movies and television. I mean, gay people, lesbian people, bi people have been around for a long, long time, for longer than I can remember. And whether you agree or disagree with the lifestyle, it doesn't matter. These people are people and they exist. and they've been having sex a long time ago and today, and they're going to continue to have sex. And so if it's not in movies and television, it would be unrealistic if same-sex relations was not in movies and television. And so I think it should be at a respectable ratio. Now, to explain further what this is about, if you just wanted to look at the planet Earth, you can possibly divide the people up as many ways as you want, but I like to simplify it the best as I possibly can, dividing it up in only 3 groups. You have white people, non-white people, and the white supremacists. Me as a black man, I would be part of the non-white people group. Black people are non-white, Asian people are non-white, red people, brown people are non-white. We will fit into that category. You also have 2 others, like I said, white people and white supremacists. Notice that I am saying that white people and the white supremacists are 2 completely different groups. I am not over here saying that if you're a white person, that automatically makes you a white supremacist. No, I am not saying that. Now, I will admit that the white people do benefit from the white supremacists and all of their power, but they are completely different groups. I'm not over here saying that all white people are racist or evil. No, I don't believe that at all. Please don't try to say in my comment section that I'm trying to coddle white people. Honestly, I'm just protecting my own narrative. And out of all 3 of those groups, the white supremacists are the most powerful in my opinion, but they also have the least amount of numbers. And you don't necessarily have to be a white person to be a white supremacist. There are black people and other groups of color that do adopt that ideology, unfortunately. And what is a white supremacist exactly, or what do they believe? A white supremacist is a person or persons who believes that through thought, speech, and action, that they should dominate all non-white people. Dominate how exactly, Brendan? Well, dominate through all 9 areas of human activity. What do you mean? Well, if you look at the planet Earth and you look at the humans, the human beings, that's us, there are 9 areas of activity that we do engage in. Those are 1, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Those are the 9 areas. Now, our late sister, Dr. Frances Quest Wilson, that passed away January of 2016, unfortunately, she did come up with a 10th area, which is medicine. That can kind of be combined in with education and economics. If you ask me, economics being the use of time and energy, and everybody knows what education is. But Dr. Frances Quest Wilson, I wish she was still here. She would have a lot of great information if she was a part of this documentary, but unfortunately she did pass away, like I said, in 2016. She also wrote the book, The ISIS Papers, The Keys to the Colors. I read this a few years ago, and I do need to revisit it again because it is a phenomenal book. I personally feel that this should be required reading for all black people on the planet, because this just opened up my eyes to a lot of things, because us black people, we have such an elementary understanding when it comes to race. And I will just say that this book did open up my eyes to a lot. But I just brought up Dr. Frances Quest Wilson because she did come up with the 10th area. You can look her up if you want to. I don't really like what it says about her on Wikipedia, talking about, you know, she has the theory, the black supremacist melanin theory. There's no such thing as black supremacy. That goes against logic. You can't have 2 supremes. But I digress. Going back to the white supremacists and how they're trying to control the planet, all of the non-white people, is to cause confusion across the planet so they can dominate, cause confusion with everybody, especially black people, through those 9 areas of activity. Sex is one of those activities, and this review, this documentary, Buck Breaking, does focus on the sex aspect, especially black people, the black population. And the so-called Buck Breaking agenda or theory is, Buck Breaking is a show of power. It is a show of dominance, not just physically, but also mentally and spiritually as well, to emasculate the black man, to suggest that anything masculine is toxic, anything that is feminine should be promoted or praised, that they want to decrease the black population or stop us from procreating in our community. And you also have to look at what is being promoted in our community versus what's not being promoted from the white supremacists in the dominant society. Like, hey, please embrace your feminine side. Please be more open to LGBTQ lifestyles. Okay, that's fine. But why is that the only thing you're promoting? If you want to promote that, can you not also promote education, labor, economic achievement, etc. You don't want to promote those things like labor, jobs, education, healthcare, but you want us to uplift our femininity and be open to LGBTQ. Why not at all? Why is it just this right here? And when you're hearing all this, you may be saying to yourself, okay, this is completely ludicrous. It's a conspiracy theory. This is stupid, pseudoscience, whatsoever. I'll just say this, I won't put anything past the white supremacists. And I also find it interesting that a lot of people, black, white, yellow, brown, or whatever, they just have some assumption that all the evil, heinous things that white supremacists did decades and hundreds of years ago, that for some reason they just don't want to do that anymore in present day. You know for darn sure that there are things that go on behind the scenes that nobody ever wants to talk about or admit to, especially when it comes to trafficking. I mean, the past year, there have been a number of popular people in the public square that have been put behind bars or that are no longer here living that have been accused of some type of trafficking. But you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know it happens, but nobody ever talks about it. This is just another segment of a society that possibly people don't want to talk about. So to back up this agenda or this theory up, and again, I'll give my personal opinion at the end of this, let's just look at some of the things that are going on right now in present day in 2022 that could back up this theory as far as the white supremacists and the dominant society wanting to control black people sexually. Number one, what decision was just passed recently this year in 2022 through the Supreme Court that controls women's bodies? Black women are also included in that. So that's one example of trying to control women's bodies or control sex. You also have black women that don't or have ever received proper health care in the medical industry. And another thing, black women experience maternal mortality 2 or 3 times higher than white women. Another example is you also have these white supremacists going around talking about replacement theory. Like, oh my gosh, the country is turning brown and browner. We're going to get replaced. We have to go out and defend ourselves and all this other stupid crap. We can't allow immigration. That's another example right there of them trying to control human beings and sex and procreation and reproductivity and all that good stuff with this replacement theory bull crap. They don't want to be replaced, so of course they're going to go out of their way to control the population through sex, especially black people. And the last but not least is also black men being locked up in jail at disproportionate rates than any other group. If all the black men are in jail, it'll be much more difficult to procreate. And here's another example, Jane Elliot, a white woman. And the reason why I bring her up is, unfortunately, a lot of black people, a lot of us are still brainwashed, and we will only listen to things when it comes out of a white person's mouth. A black person can say something, it'll go through one ear and out the other. But if a white person says, oh, let me listen, take some notes and highlight and all that good stuff. Jane Elliot just recently talking about the destruction of Planned Parenthood. And there was a book by Ben Wattensberg called The Birth Dearth, who is saying there are not enough white babies being born right now. And if we don't do something about it, we're going to be replaced. We're going to be wiped out. So when you consider all of those 5 bullet points that I just listed, it's not really hard to believe that the white supremacists would want to control black people's population and stop them from procreating. And Tariq Nasheed does have a lot of great guests in this documentary to explain his position. Some I am aware of and that I do listen to on a consistent basis, and there are some other people that I've never heard of. And those are Erica Lachey, Jabari Assange, Dr. Wesley Muhammad, Rizza Islam, I like Rizza, Professor James Small, Dr. Kaba Kamen, I like him as well, Dr. Phil Valentine, Corey Holcomb, Dr. Afaya Mbulishaka, Dr. Oye Adwamat, Jade Arundel, Judge Joe Brown, Dr. Randy Short, Dr. T. Hassan Johnson, Bishop Tarbert Swan, Lord Jamar, and Tariq Nasheed himself. Like I said, some of those I do listen to from time to time. Some people I've never heard of before. So sorry for that long disclaimer or explanation, but before we actually get into the review, let me tell you what the official synopsis is all about. As a new threat to black masculinity rises, Tariq Nasheed joins forces in this documentary to uncover the hidden agenda behind it. All right, so at the very beginning of this video, I did say that there was 2 reasons why I didn't want to review this film. One, again, being that I did not want all the smoke. It seemed like every time this movie or documentary trailer came up, somebody was offended, and I just wanted to protect my energy. Another reason is why I just wasn't that enthused to do it, because frankly, this is not Tariq Nasheed's best documentary. I do feel that everybody should watch it if they do get a chance, but sometimes the information was spot on, accurate, and other times it kind of went over my head through one ear and out the other, or it just took a lot for me to believe. I mean, there are some things in this documentary that you already know off the top of your head that you can get on board with immediately. There are some things that you're gonna be like, okay, ain't no way in hell. And there are other things where you say, okay, I'm just gonna have to do more further research to make this make sense for myself. And I will say, Tariq Nasheed does not hold back any punches at all in this documentary. I mean, he is completely explicit with everything, with the message, with the imagery, with everything. I mean, I do not recommend anyone show this to their children at all. I think that would be a very, very bad idea, especially with some of the imagery that is presented, especially at the very beginning of this. Now, the images won't haunt you or anything, but I just don't feel like it's anything that a child should watch. Now, if you want to look at all of his other documentary films, you know, Hidden Colors 1 through 5 and 1804, The Hidden History of Haiti, I do recommend everybody watch those, even children. I think that's perfectly fine. It's a great history lesson. And there are other historians that I do respect that have come to me and like, oh, Hidden Colors is not 100% accurate. It's not accurate all the way. This is kind of wrong here. This is kind of wrong there. And I will say, okay, that may be true, especially like with it not being 100% accurate, but for darn sure, it is a lot better than what is taught or not taught in the main society, in dominant society. And unfortunately, Tariq Nasheed just didn't do the best job with connecting all the dots when he was trying to make a lot of his points. Not all the time, but just in some segments. And again, this is not an attack on the LGBTQ community, but in one instance, I do feel like he did attack Black gay men indirectly, and I have to be honest and address that. And when it comes to film critics, movie critics, pundits, etc., there's kind of an unwritten rule that people apply to themselves that you don't want to read anyone else's review or watch anyone else's review before you record yours, because you could subconsciously mimic what that other person is saying in their review, and you don't want to do that. You want to be original. But with this particular film, I did do something different. I did check out a couple of other reviews from a Black woman and a Black man on YouTube. The Black man got a lot of views on his review. He got over like 200 something thousand. And there were some things that I didn't agree with and some things I did, but I wanted to check it out because I was trying to be sympathetic and empathetic to everybody in the community. And they didn't really like this documentary at all. Some of the stuff that he was saying in his review was just completely unfair. He was trying to make fun of one of the contributors in this documentary, saying, oh, the man is just saying stuff that don't make no sense. He brought up a certain term and I tried to look it up and I couldn't find it anywhere on Google. I took 10 seconds and Googled the phrase that he was referring to and I was able to find it immediately. So I don't really think that's fair, but I'm gonna try to be as fair as I possibly can in this documentary review. And actually, one of the great things that I do like about this documentary is the structure. It is divided into 7 parts. Of course, at the very beginning, you have the intro, and at the end, you have the conclusion. And in my opinion, those are the best things about the documentary because it does a great job of trying to explain the point of this documentary and also the end of it, just summing up everything and providing solutions. The second part of this documentary starts to delve into the white supremacist European sexual culture dating back hundreds and thousands of years ago. And then it goes into buck breaking as far as on the plantation, which a lot of us are already familiar with, buck breaking in the early Jim Crow era, the civil rights movement, and then modern day. Some of these sections are better than others, and I will talk about that right now. And I really feel like this documentary would have been more palatable and more beneficial to all of its viewers if after the intro, it went straight to the buck breaking on the plantation, because that is something that most people are already familiar with. But it did not go there. It went immediately to the white supremacist European sexual culture. And this right here is the most explicit out of the whole documentary when it comes to the images, talking about all these gods that the Greeks and the Romans worshipped. And just some of the imagery that was depicted in this was quite alarming. They had one god by the name of Bacchus that I've never heard of before. And the image was of him walking along and his penis was exposed. And his penis was so large and so long that it went past his knee. It was bigger than his leg. And it was so big that there was a number of strings tied to the tip of it with hummingbirds flying to keep it up because it was so heavy and big. And so, yeah, I don't think that children should be watching anything like that. I mean, and whatever you're into. I mean, I really didn't care to look at it myself. The first 10 or 15 minutes of this documentary, and it comes in about an hour and 50 minutes, I'm kind of watching like, okay, what the hell is this? And there were just a lot of images of men having orgies and this sticking in this hole, and it was all types of configurations, images of sex acts and combinations of this inserting into this hole and this position and that position, and it was quite wild. Like I said, nothing a child should, witness, in my opinion. And it really just started going into the white supremacist European sexual culture and how it operated at an animal level. How a lot of them were pansexual and just would have sex with all types of animals and beasts and sheep, and even talked about certain laws that would pass in Scandinavian countries that would allow or not allow this. And that reminded me of a film that I even reviewed on my channel called Lamb, to where it was a couple in Iceland that just go see the movie or check out the trailer. It was talking about people possibly having sex with sheep and goat, and that's quite weird. So it was kind of interesting when I saw that mimic in this documentary too. And at the very beginning of this documentary, it does cover a lot on the subject of eugenics. And if you don't know what eugenics is, look it up. But if you need some help, eugenics is the scientifically erroneous and immoral theory of racial improvement and planned breeding, which gained popularity during the early 20th century. Eugenicists worldwide believed that they could perfect human beings and eliminate so-called social ills through genetics and heredity. So the white supremacists back in the day had a field day with all of this, and this documentary does shed light on that. And it even talks about just years and years and years ago, how the white supremacists, the leaders, the people in power, would have black men and black boys around just consuming all of this knowledge and history and education. But at the same time, they didn't want these black men and these black boys to take this information and procreate in their own society, in their own community, and build them up. So what they did was like, okay, hey, we don't mind you being around us, but if you aren't, we're gonna cut off your penis, we're gonna cut off your testicles, and just turn you into eunuchs, to where you will have no type of reproductive features at all. That is just cut off. You won't be able to reproduce, procreate. You won't have any sexual desires at all. And then the images they were showing to help depict this really did paint a picture for the point that he was trying to make. It also just delves in that the white supremacists came from the Ice Age, and that when you're living in that type of culture, I mean, anything goes, any hole is necessary, and that a lot of this ideology stemmed from that. And the documentary really started to get my attention when it started to talk about buck breaking on the slave plantation, which is something that we're all really familiar with, to where they would take some of the strongest males and just spread them out, tie their arms down, tie their legs apart, and rape them in front of the whole community. They would do this to buck break the men mentally, spiritually, and physically. And the reason they did this, because it would quell any type of mindset to rebel, to revolt, to fight back the white supremacists. They would say, hey, don't you even think about it, because I just took your strongest male, your strongest buck, and I broke him. I mean, and that went on countless times through slavery, with the men, with the women, with the child, with everybody. And it's not just physically either, it's also mental as well, of how they taught the Bible to us. A lot of black people in the world, in this country, are Christian, but a lot of people don't like to acknowledge where black people learn Christianity from. Now, there are different versions of Christianity, yes, and I grew up a Christian, but I do acknowledge now that the version of Christianity that I learned was a very whitewashed, watered down version of it. And I've come to learn the truth. And I don't want to get too religious right now, because this is dealing with the sexual aspect of all 9 areas of human activity. But the Bible verses that they taught us suggested nothing but us being obedient to our slave masters, being docile, forgetting any type of freedom or justice, or to fight back just to succumb to the conditions of our slave masters. That's also buck breaking mentally, not just physically. How even in slavery on the plantation, there was just no gender. There was a degendering of the black men and black women. They did not treat us the same. They also brought up Sojourner Truth of, ain't I a woman? Because she was a woman, but she was being treated like a man. There was just no difference at all, except when it came to sex, with all the breeding forms, how they would make males sleep with their mothers and boys sleep with their sisters and aunties and uncles and all that. It was was very disgusting. And this is all something that the white supremacists put on us, and they tackle all that in this documentary. And of course, you're going to have to do your research. He did list a lot of white supremacists by the name of Laura Cornberry and Madame Lillery down in Louisiana. They did all types of heinous things to black people. I mean, Madame Lillery did all types of sexual experiments on black people, breaking their bones and trying to reconfigure them back into crabs. And of course, doing involuntary sex changes on black slaves as well. It was quite disgusting and things that are not taught in our public schools today. And in the next section, of course, we have all heard of Ida B. Wells. If you don't know who she is, please look that sister up. She was a rioter, but she was able to help a lot in the fight to try to get us justice. And even in the early Jim Crow area where we were being hung and lynched, she was able to come out and be like, okay, not only are these black men being hung and lynched because of their sexual prowess, and then this just stupid, ridiculous idea that black men are going around raping white women and we have no control over our bodies, etc. She was like, no, they're also being castrated because of their economic achievements. They don't want any competition from black people. I'm speaking of the white supremacists. And so these are just more reasons why we have to chop off the penis. We have to chop off their testicles and hang them, you know, to set an example and to make sure that, you know, there is no rise up as far as sexual reproduction or economic advancement from the black people. I even like the sections where it talks about how the white supremacists tried to buck break black men and women when it comes to hair or anything that hangs. Anything that hangs is a threat to the white supremacists, whether it's testicles or a penis or even our hair. I mean, recently in New York, I believe that there was a law recently passed that you can't discriminate against women or black women, especially because of their hair. And we all know that's a threat right now. Every time somebody has dreads or long locks or they have a fro, it's considered a threat. It's considered unprofessional. Those are ways of buck breaking people mentally as well. I mean, just imagine, I mean, look at the boomers. A lot of the boomers, the boomer class, I mean, they could not get jobs if their hair was not in a certain way. And that conditions the mind to self-hate. That is just another form of buck breaking. It is not just saying that, you know, you have to be raped or sexually molested to be buck breaking. And let me just say this, there's nothing in this documentary that is saying that if you are part of the LGBTQ community, that just means that you're buck broken. No, if you're gay, be gay. I mean, there was one sister that was talking about the 10-year laws back in Louisiana that was just suggesting that black hair was ugly and then that black women had to cover up their hair. But then when black women would cover up their hair with scarves and wraps and stuff like that, that even the white men was still attracted to them. And so there was just no winning. I mean, when we covered up we had to cover up our hair because it was considered ugly and offensive to people that had to look at it. But even then we did wrap up our hair, white men still found it attractive and will want to mess with black women over white women. So like no matter what we did, we always lost. There was even a section that have a lot of this stem from the Nazi Party. I mean, there's a book that they reference called this Pink Swastika, Homosexuality in the Nazi Party. I haven't read it, but it is something that I do want to look into. It did seem quite interesting. That could provide a lot of context. I even like the part in the middle of the documentary where it says everything negative, everything degenerate, the dominant society tries to put a black face on it, even when it comes to pedophilia, which is of course horrible, or homophobia in the black church. When really white evangelical Christians are the most homophobic out of everybody, they just try to say, nope, it's the black church. Everybody in the black church is homophobic. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. And I also really do like the section that Miss Erica Lachey was talking about. I mean, she does talk about feminism quite a lot on her outlets on social media, but she just goes on to say that it doesn't make sense for a black woman to join a white feminist movement because of what they prioritize. As a black person or a black woman, you're always going to be perceived as black first. So that should be the priority. But the white feminist movement, they prioritize sex and gender. Now, sexism does exist and it is a horrible thing, but it's a different case for black women. You can't hide behind your blackness like you can possibly hide behind your gender or your sexuality. And it just causes a bunch of confusion when black women try to join that movement. And the only reason that white feminists let black women join that movement was to pad their numbers to fight against black men. And I happen to agree with that. I mean, she even referenced Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton in the women's suffrage movement that didn't care about black women or black men, that again only allowed them in to pass the numbers because they wanted to go against anything that black people had to do with, or because black men was going to be able to get a vote before them. I mean, they was even quoted in saying that, okay, you know, black man ain't nothing, they don't deserve to vote or anything like that. So it's a con game that a lot of us have to watch out for. I mean, there was even a section of how the dominant society and the white supremacists try to change the narrative of all of our great leaders from the past to try to fit their agenda. One being Nat Turner with his rebellion and him wanting to fight back. They wanted to erase his name from the movement and be like, no, it wasn't Nat Turner. It wasn't the strong black man. It was everybody's movement that wanted to fight back. So let's just remove him from this. Also with Fred Hampton, who was assassinated in Chicago. He came up with the Rainbow Coalition, but later, you know, the rainbow to show the different color races. But now the LGBTQ has adopted that rainbow and used it, you know, for their reasons in their community. And also there was a book called A Life of Reinvention by Malcolm Manny Muraball, who tried to actually change the sexual orientation of Malcolm X and say that he was gay and that he admitted to having same-sex relations and all this. Why is all these narratives just trying to be changed? For what reason? And a lot of this documentary is also trying to help you be aware that there can be racist white supremacists that are in the LGBTQ community, or there are people that are in the LGBTQ community that also happen to be white supremacists. And we cannot forget that a lot of white supremacists try to hide behind the shield of LGBTQ, and that's not right, and we should call it out. Richard Pryor was one person that called it out back on one of his performances decades ago. He was criticizing white gay rights activists saying, okay, where's your support for black people if you said that we all deserve justice? And even when it comes to present day and modern day right now, it does seem like masculinity is being demonized and femininity is being praised, especially when it does come to children. I mean, there are a few educators in here that are just saying that, hey, when little boys in school, if they're being masculine, they're being taught that that's toxic and being more rewarded if they are more feminine. I mean, there was a gentleman in this documentary that was saying that if black people are labeled as homophobic, that can be a trigger or gaslighting to try to make them more gay friendly and accepting. And that's a bit weird. And it just also talks about if a black heterosexual male says that, hey, I don't want to date a trans woman or a transgender, that makes them homophobic. I don't understand how that makes somebody homophobic because they have a preference of who they want to date. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, this demonizing of people because they have a preference is ridiculous. And how in society today, you know, if you're black and masculine, that's a sin and that's wrong. I mean, they also had a section of Miss Gloria Steinem, who was prominent in the 80s, who worked for the CIA, who also tried to attack black men for their masculinity, calling it toxic, through all of her literature. And another part that made me uncomfortable was the section talking about the normalization of pedophilia, something that's going on right now. That is quite weird as well. I've seen videos myself online before I even seen this documentary of things of that nature. I mean, there was once a TED Talk of a young lady going around talking about there's nothing wrong with pedophilia. You know, it's just a normal attraction. It's normal. It's just, we should normalize this. And that's just disgusting. I'm even having a hard time talking about it myself. Even with Epstein and all the trafficking that he had to deal with, they even go there with his island and everything behind the scenes as far as that's concerned. I mean, it is quite disturbing and ties into this theory that this documentary is suggesting. I mean, seriously, over a year ago, I was just scrolling on Instagram and I came across something that made me want to look something up on YouTube. And there was actually YouTube videos that were suggesting or promoting masturbation for children, trying to teach them sexual pleasure. It was actually a video on YouTube teaching children how to masturbate and how to pleasure themselves. What the hell is that? Now, sexual education is very, very important, very, very important, and should be taught in schools, but at a certain age. Why can't it be taught in high school or around the child is 13, 14, 15 years old? This doesn't need to be taught to 3, 4, 5-year-olds. They don't need to be learning how to masturbate or what sexual pleasure is or anything like that. And that's just weird to me. And I'm not just talking about men, or I'm not just talking about drag queens that go to kindergarten and sing ABCs or anything like that. I mean, I don't know what that's about, but I'm not going to raise hell about it. But at the same time, you should be teaching children about sex or trying to sexualize them or teaching them how to masturbate or anything like that. That is beyond gross. And this documentary does dive into all that as well. And again, Epstein, we know he exists. We know what was going on, why he got locked up. Do you really think he was the only one? Guys, I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna be honest with you. This subject material is very, very hard to talk about, but I have been recording for 1 hour and 33 minutes just trying to collect all my thoughts and provide a decent review for you without being too emotional and biased. I do think that everybody should watch this, but in the defense of people that are offended by this, I do feel that there was a segment or two that is a jab at gay people that may come across offensive. And the reason why I say that is, look, I'm a heterosexual male. I don't wear makeup and I never will wear makeup or any form of lipstick. But there was a small segment in this whole documentary that it seemed like it suggested, okay, if a black man were to wear lipstick, that automatically makes him sexually confused. Now, out of all the 7 billion people on the planet right now, are there a handful of people that possibly are sexually confused? Yes, I think that's pretty obvious. But to label a black man just because he's wearing lipstick as sexually confused, I don't think that's fair at all. I really don't. I don't know why a black I mean, if you want to look, I'm not into makeup, I'm not into lipstick. Do what you want to do, but I just don't think it's fair to say, okay, just because a black man wears lipstick, a blue lipstick, that means he's sexually confused. I don't think Tariq Nasheed was doing that on purpose, but when you're covering a topic like this, you have to be very, very, very careful with every word, with every syllable that you use. And the image, I don't think a gay person or somebody that was sexually confused emailed him and be like, hey, I'm sexually confused. Here's a picture of myself that I want you to use in your documentary. I just don't see that happening. And so, again, I don't think Tariq Nasheed purposely tried to offend anybody or poke jabs at anyone at all. I don't think that's the case. Even though he did not say that in this documentary, I know deep down inside he does love his black brothers and sisters that may be a part of the LGBT community. Those are our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, our sisters, our aunties, and they've been around for the longest time and they will continue to be here. The main point of this documentary is that we should not just be promoting sexual identity or gender identity before everything else. If you want to promote this, let's just keep it consistent across the board. Promote economic advancement and labor and law and economics and all of that stuff, you know, self-defense. Don't just promote, you know, hey, you need to embrace your feminine side and toxic and masculinity is toxic or anything like that. Out of all of Tariq Nasheed's documentaries, again, I will say that this is not his best. 1804, The Hidden History of Haiti, and Hidden Colors 4, The Religion of White Supremacy is the best. I'm not sure if I'll review those other ones. It depends on how good this video does. So if I can get like 1,000 thumbs up, that would be great. But let me know in the comment section what you think. As far as my rating is concerned, I'm not going to rate an independent film, but I will recommend it to everybody to where if you do get a chance to check this out, go ahead and, you know, check it out. You're probably not going to agree with everything, but I do still think it is worth a viewing. And I believe you can get a copy of that at hiddencolorsfilms.com. That's hiddencolorsfilms.com. Also, again, subscribe to my channel and check out my American Maroon First Look trailer reaction. Also, check out my review for Hidden Colors 5, The Art of Black Warfare, and my review for 1804, The Hidden History of Haiti. And this is your first time finding me, other things that you can find on my channel is I do trailer reactions, I do movie reviews, I do spoiler movie reviews. I also have a weekly movie news roundup show every Sunday, 6:30 p.m. CST. I cover my favorite TV shows right now. P-Valley is not my favorite, but I am still covering in that out of the theater reactions. And if I'm lucky, I may get an interview here and there with a Hollywood star. But again, guys, I cannot stress this enough. If you're a part of the LGBTQ community, I got nothing but love for you. If you love me, I love you back. As far as the comment section is concerned, if you do want to be critical of this documentary, I will only allow that if you've seen the documentary. Based on your commentary, I'm not trying to sound obnoxious or anything like that. I will be able to tell if you've seen it or not. Now, you can leave a comment if you want to, if you even haven't seen it. But if you're going to be critical of my review or critical of my assessment of this or critical of the documentary, you have to have watched it, you know. But hey, have fun in the comment section. Let's be respectful. Let's have a good time. But guys, that is just my opinion, and I want to thank you so much for tuning in. If you did like this video, please go ahead and give me the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Help me reach my next milestone of 50,000 subscribers. And again, guys, before you go, don't forget that my name is Brandon Keith Avery, and that's just my opinion. Peace.